The Gospel reading according to John, verses 17 through 44. And if you want to look in your Pew Bible, it's on page 897, or up there. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus told her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in that resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but he was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, the Jews who had come with her were also weeping. He was deeply moved by the Spirit and greatly troubled, and he said, "Where have you laid him?" And they said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him?" But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man and also have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around that they may believe that you sent me." When he said these things, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." The Gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
And some people are doers. I've always been the latter. I don't know just why, but I've always been more comfortable if I was up around doing something. Maybe it was that appreciation as a little girl. Ever since I was a little girl, I used to help Mother with the house, and my father would notice. And he especially appreciated when I'd help Mother serve a good meal. Maybe it was that early appreciation. I don't know. Whatever it was, I kept that work ethic into adulthood. It's just the way I am wired. I always think I need to be up doing something and running to the market, dusting and cleaning and making plans to introduce it to welcome guests. That's just me. By now you've probably figured out from your knowledge of Scripture that I am Martha, the sister of Mary and Lazarus. You probably remember me as the person that Jesus spoke rather harshly to. Everybody knows me by that. Well, let me tell you about that day. Actually, let me go back even further and tell you what led up to that day. So I suppose one of the advantages of being the kind of person I am is that I had developed a reputation as a good hostess. I hope you don't think I'm bragging, but if you'd asked anybody in Bethany who the best hostess was, I'll bet you they'd say that I was. And I was rather proud of that. I took great pride in knowing that people felt that they could stop by unannounced and that they'd always feel welcome, that they would feel at home. There'd always be food in the kitchen for them to eat. And when other people were entertaining guests and they would contact me for advice on how to help them, I always considered that a compliment. Well, we had known Jesus several years before this when he was helping his father in the carpentry shop. We always knew there was something special about him. Didn't quite know what, but we knew that there was much more in store for him than being a carpenter. Well, after his baptism and he started his public ministry, we realized that John the Baptist had been right. This was the Messiah we had all been waiting for. Oh, I know there were some people that didn't believe that, but I was convinced. I had seen the miracles he had done, and nobody could teach the way he did without having God with him. Well, to us though, Jesus was more than a teacher or a prophet or even a Messiah. He was a friend. And on more than one occasion, Jesus told us how comfortable he felt coming to visit us. You see, when Jesus started his public ministry, he didn't have a home to come home to. He would walk from place to place, and that would get tiring, not having a place to lay his head. So he told us that he loved coming to visit us. I want to think I had something to do with that, because every time he'd come, I would fix the house up really special and just make it perfect. And then I would go to the market and I'd get all of his favorite foods, and I'd be prepared to help to feed not only Jesus, but his disciples as well. Well, the day that you're thinking about, Jesus had come a day earlier than I had planned. And I was screwing around trying to get everything ready just because I needed everything to be perfect. And I was not ready, and I was so upset. And you see, Mary was sitting listening to Jesus. In my day, the women and the children were always behind the scenes, preparing and doing everything. And the men were the ones that were the teachers and the people getting educated. We were never sitting listening to somebody teach. And so I told Mary numerous times, I said, Mary, I need your help. And I'll have to tell you, I became more than angry when she wouldn't come and help. That's where she was supposed to be, is helping me. Well, after asking her several times, I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to ask Jesus. I'm going to tell Jesus to tell Mary where she's supposed to be, with me helping get everything ready, because there was no way I was going to have everything ready by the time we needed to eat. Well, what he told me, I was so shocked. I never expected his answer. He said, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken from her. Not only did Jesus not tell Mary to help me, he chided me for not being more like Mary. Oh, I was so hurt at first. Oh, I just couldn't believe it. But then after thinking about it, I realized that partly Jesus was saying that we have a need to know about Jesus. And partly he was saying, we all have different gifts, and that's okay. And that what Mary was doing was what her gifts were. See, Jesus had a way of making everybody feel important, no matter what gifts they had. He wasn't so much talking against my gifts as he was saying that there was an importance to know him, to know Jesus. And that's something we all need to do more often, is to just sit at Jesus' feet and learn about him. Jesus had a way of having everybody feel important, though. Well, that's the incidents that everybody knows me, Martha, as. But there's actually another incident that happened that was much more important than this. See, our brother Lazarus, I'm Lazarus and Mary's sister. And Jesus loved Lazarus and loved Mary and me. And he started getting really sick. Everything we didn't seem to work to help to cure him. And he kept getting sicker and sicker. And I knew that if Jesus had been there, he would have been healed. But yet Jesus was teaching a long ways away. He wasn't in Bethany at the time. So I had a friend go and tell Jesus and ask Jesus to come so that he could heal Lazarus. Unfortunately, he was so far away, it just didn't work, and Jesus couldn't come. And in the meantime, my dear brother Lazarus died. We were in the house doing our regular period of mourning with all of our friends from town when there was news of Jesus' arrival. So I left, and I just couldn't wait to see Jesus. And yet, as I was approaching, and Mary stayed behind, that was just like her and me going forward. And as I was approaching, I was just so relieved to see the sight of my friend. And yet, there was an anger that he hadn't been here when we needed him. He was out saving the world, and he wasn't here for his friends. And so when I got there, I said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But even so, I know that whatever you ask of God, it will be given to you. I'm not sure exactly what I was saying. I just wished he had been there. Well, he looked at me and he said, your brother will rise again. Well, Jesus had taught us about the resurrection of the dead, and I knew that we would all rise again on the last day, that there would be a major resurrection of the dead. And so I said, yes, Lord, I do believe that we will all rise again at the end of time. Then he looked at me and he said something I will never forget. He looked and he had such authority in his voice. And he said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And he who believes in me will never die. I will never forget that. And then he looked at me and he said, do you believe this? And I said, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. Well, then Jesus asked me to go get Mary, so I went and grabbed Mary, and she came down to talk to Jesus, and she said the exact same thing I did. She said, Lord, if you had been here, my father wouldn't have died. And she was sobbing. She was so sad. And I was crying. And when Jesus saw us both so upset, you could see his face change. He had such compassion, and he loved Lazarus so much, like a brother. And he began to cry. See, when we hurt, Jesus hurts. He has so much empathy for us. He loves us so much. And he wants to know, you to know that he loves you and he has empathy when you hurt. Well, then Jesus asked to see the tomb. So we brought him to the tomb. And then he asked the strangest thing. He asked us to roll the stone away. Well, you've got to know that in our day, we didn't know about embalming the way you do. And so we did the best we could with bodies, but it had been really hot outside. And we knew that if we rolled the stone away, there would be a terrible odor because Lazarus had been dead for 4 days already, and it was just going to reek. But Jesus insisted for us to roll that stone away. So we did. And then Jesus fell to his knees and he prayed. But it was more than a prayer. It was like he was thanking God for an answer to prayer. Then he stood up and he said in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" We all just stood there. And then, a minute later, there stood Lazarus at the entrance of the cave. He was alive. He was alive. After 4 days being in that tomb, he was alive. We were all stunned. So was Lazarus. He was totally stunned. We just were shocked. And Jesus said, "Well, unbind him and let him go." So we ran up to Lazarus and took off his grave clothes. We were all screaming and shouting and clapping our hands. We were so excited. Lazarus was alive. After 4 days in the tomb, Jesus had given life back to Lazarus. Unreal. We were all so shocked. After a while, then we just kind of all stopped screaming and shouting, and the reality of what just happened sunk in, and we were just quiet. We didn't know what to say or do or even think. Well, that was the best day of my life. We had Lazarus back. And I just knew that if people heard about this miraculous healing, that people would just follow Jesus. But unfortunately, the religious authorities didn't see it that way. Instead of rejoicing in the fact that Jesus had performed this wonderful miracle and raised Lazarus from the dead, they saw it as a threat. So then they started plotting to kill Jesus. Then we heard later on that Jesus had been arrested. And there was actually talk of killing Jesus, putting him to death. How could anyone do such a thing or think that way? Don't they know that all Jesus did is love people? He spent his whole life just helping people and healing people and loving people and teaching people. How could anyone speak of death? Well, by the time we got to Jerusalem, there was already talk of his crucifixion. I will never forget the picture of Jesus, all bloody and beaten, carrying his heavy cross to be crucified. And then see that crucifixion, seeing my Jesus on that cross, dying. Oh, it was the worst day of my life. I wish I had died and not seen that. It was horrible. It was the longest Passover ever. There was no joy in that Passover. Oh. Until Sunday came. And there was word that Jesus had risen from the dead. Well, a lot of people wouldn't believe it unless they saw it, but I believed it. I had seen him raise Lazarus from the dead, and I knew he could do that. It was, all of a sudden, everything was all right again, because Jesus was in control. Well, if you want to remember me as the person that Jesus spoke harshly to and got reprimanded, that's okay. I'd rather have you remember the words that I said when he asked me. When I said, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." Better yet, claim him for yourself. Da, da, da.